Jasmine Crockett doesn't just speak out, she shakes things up. At a hearing where Ivanka Trump tried to paint a perfect picture, Jasmine made sure the truth couldn't be ignored. The seniors she represents, they're not buying the everything is fine narrative. As the tension built, Barron, eager to defend his family, leaned forward with a mocking smile until Jasmine turned the tables with one cutting question. And then finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, Barron asked, "Wait, are you my mom?" What happened next? You won't believe it. The hearing had just begun, and the atmosphere in the room felt charged with anticipation. The sleek, polished conference room was filled with officials, reporters, and the occasional murmurs from the crowd. But it was the presence of Ivanka Trump and her younger brother, Barron, that commanded the attention of everyone present. They were the first to arrive, seated at the front of the room, their faces calm and composed as if they were used to being under the public eye. Ivanka, dressed in a sharp suit, radiated confidence as she adjusted the microphone in front of her. The room fell silent, and she wasted no time getting straight to the heart of the matter. With a smooth, practiced tone, she began to speak about the state of the nation, her words carefully, measured and purposeful. She painted a picture of progress, claiming that the country was running smoothly, that the economy was strong, and that under her father's leadership, all the major issues had been addressed. There were no problems left to fix, she asserted, only opportunities to expand on the successes they had already achieved. Barron, seated beside his sister, nodded in agreement. He was a teenager, still growing into his role in the family's public affairs, but there was a certain confidence in the way he spoke. His voice was clear, and his words echoed the sentiment that Ivanka had shared. "I visit seniors all across the country," he said, his voice carrying the same polished tone as his sister's, "and they're happy. They're thankful for what we're doing. They appreciate the work my father is doing for the country. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it used to be." There was an air of finality in his words, as though he expected the discussion to end there. To Barron, this wasn't just a political conversation. It was a declaration of success. In his world, things were moving forward. Problems were being solved, and everyone was content. But as he spoke, there was something in the air that felt off. It was as though the words they were saying didn't quite match the reality outside the walls of the hearing room. Enter Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine had been sitting across from them, listening intently, her eyes never leaving Ivanka or Barron as they spoke. She had been in enough hearings to know when something wasn't adding up, and she wasn't about to let them get away with sweeping the real issues under the rug. A seasoned political figure, Jasmine wasn't just here to ask questions. She was here to challenge the narrative and demand real answers. She shifted in her seat, and the crowd around her seemed to sense that something was about to change. With a calm but firm voice, Jasmine spoke up, cutting through the confident assertions coming from the Trump siblings. "I hear what you're saying," she began. "But let's talk about those seniors you're mentioning. You know, the ones who supposedly have it so great." She paused, her gaze locked on Barron, then Ivanka. "I'd like to hear it from them, actually. You see, the seniors I've spoken to don't exactly share the same rosy picture you're painting." There was a brief silence as Jasmine's words hung in the air. Barron and Ivanka exchanged a quick glance, clearly caught off guard. The narrative they had so carefully crafted suddenly felt less certain, and Jasmine's shift in focus had everyone on edge. Without missing a beat, Jasmine continued, "I've spoken to seniors in every part of this country. They've told me about the difficulties they're facing, skyrocketing medical bills, lack of affordable care, and the growing divide between those who are well off and those who are barely scraping by. Where's the help for them, Ivanka Barron? Where's the smooth running system for them?" The tension in the room grew palpable. Jasmine's words had cut through the carefully constructed image of success that Ivanka and Barron had tried to sell. The room's mood shifted from one of complacency to one of discomfort. And for the first time, the Trump siblings seemed less sure of themselves. Ivanka, still sitting straight, took a breath, her expression hardening. But before she could respond, Jasmine had already seized the moment. She wasn't going to let them dismiss the real issues so easily. The seniors in her district had been struggling for years, and now they were finally getting the chance to speak up. Jasmine's voice rose slightly as she addressed the room. The truth is, the seniors I've talked to aren't living the dream you're selling. They're struggling to make ends meet. And while you two sit here talking about how great things are, they're at home wondering when anyone will actually listen to their needs. Jasmine's words didn't just challenge the status quo, they exposed it. And that's when it happened. Barron, seemingly eager to defend his family, leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he shot Jasmine, a look that was both defensive and mocking. He let out a small chuckle, shaking his head as he prepared his retort. Well, I guess you could say these seniors were brought here by your money, right? Barron quipped, his tone dripping with sarcasm. I mean, they probably don't even know how good they have it. And don't worry, he continued, with a smirk. We're making sure all these outsiders are thrown out. My father's already handling that, so maybe you don't need to worry about them anymore. The room went quiet for a moment, and Jasmine's gaze locked onto Barron's. The young Trump seemed to think his words had landed, but Jasmine's reaction was cool, calculated, and something far more powerful than any retort Barron could muster. She wasn't about to let him distract from the real issue. As Barron's words echoed through the room, the smugness in his tone didn't just sit poorly with Jasmine, it ignited a fire within her. She wasn't about to let him reduce the very real struggles of millions of people to a joke. Especially not when it came to the seniors who had entrusted their voices to her. With one swift move, she shifted the conversation, taking control of the moment in a way that no one could have predicted. Jasmine didn't just want to rebut Barron's childish JB. She wanted to give the real seniors a chance to speak. She had been waiting for this opening, and now was the time to show the world that the narrative Ivanka and Barron were pushing wasn't the whole truth. Turning her attention to the room, Jasmine spoke with a calm, unwavering authority. I think it's time we hear from the very people you're talking about, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. You see, it's easy to sit up here and talk about what a great job the administration's doing. But it's another thing to look the people who are actually suffering in the eyes and tell them their lives are better. She motioned for the doors at the back of the room, and the crowd's murmurs quieted in anticipation. Jasmine knew the seniors she had invited would give the hearing a perspective that could not be ignored. They weren't handpicked or paid for, as Barron had so callously suggested. They were real people who had experienced the failures of the system firsthand. As the seniors entered the room, one by one, the change in the atmosphere was immediate.